Over the weekend, John Cena, probably the most recognizable wrestler active in the world right now, turned from a good guy to a bad guy. And that says something important about American culture, American politics, and yes, Donald Trump's rise. Okay, let me explain because it might not seem initially all that obvious. So let's just start with the basics in case you don't follow pro wrestling, but you should. So John Cena has been a good guy, a face in the world of wrestling for basically his entire career. He's sort of the all-American guy, right? He's always been a good guy with very few exceptions. Well, over the weekend, there was a big WWE event called Elimination Chamber. And whoever won that would go to wrestle Cody Rhodes, who's the current face, the best good guy in wrestling. Cena won it, which was kind of weird because Cena's a good guy, a face, as is Cody Rhodes. But then The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, came out and he got involved. And basically through wrestling, it wound up that Cena turns on Cody Rhodes. Cena becomes a heel, a bad guy, and beats the hell out of Cody Rhodes and sets up the two of them facing off in WrestleMania, which is, in case you don't know, the Super Bowl of professional wrestling. Okay, so this is important, okay, because I've long thought that wrestling, professional wrestling, not like collegiate Greco-Roman wrestling, professional wrestling, which, yes, I know is fake, provides a sort of a decoder ring for American culture and American politics. Because I think politics is downstream from culture. So what culture does, politics follows. And what wrestling does is right on the sort of bleeding edge of culture. So I've always been fascinated with how wrestling represents who we are. I always think wrestling holds up a mirror to us and sort of tells us who we are. So I want to go back before I go forward. So I want to go back to the 1980s, which was when I was a kid. And the leading face at that time was Hulk Hogan, Terry Bollea. He spoke at the Republican National Convention for Donald Trump in 2024. Hogan was the sort of prototypical face, prototypical good guy, the platonic ideal of the good guy, right? He was patriotic, and he told kids to eat their Wheaties and take their vitamins and all of these things. And he always won. And what's interesting about Hogan was not just who Hogan was, which was the unquestioned good guy. You could never question his virtue. It was who he faced off with. So one of his big opponents in those days was the Iron Sheik. The Iron Sheik was from Iran. He would run down the U.S. in his promo speeches. He wore like a headscarf. He had pointy shoes. I mean, it was really stereotypical, but that's what it was back then. We're fighting against these Middle Eastern guys. He would also fight this guy named Nikita Volkov, who would come and sing the Russian national anthem in the ring again, run down America. Volkov, by the way, was not Russian. He was Croatian. He actually lived in Maryland, funnily enough. Anyway, the point was Hogan always beat these guys because Hogan was the good guy. America was the good guy. We beat the bad guys. We beat Iran and Russia. It was clear cut. It was simple. It was easy, right? Okay, so let me stop there quickly and say, I'm doing this kind of analysis every day. I hope it sheds light for you on American politics. I hope it makes you understand it better. I am calling balls and strikes no matter what uniform the batter at the plate is wearing. Independent, nonpartisan, thoughtful, transparent analysis. If you want to get behind that, please become a subscriber. Okay, so the 80s. Now, as we move into the 90s, our culture starts to change. We no longer want to be just the good guys, right? We no longer want to... The good guy becomes a little less interesting. So Hulk Hogan eventually turns heel. He becomes a bad guy. In the mid-1990s. And then by the 2010s, wrestling is in kind of its attitude era where they're pushing the boundaries of basically everything, kind of blurring the moral lines. And at the same time, I want to go to a movie reference because, again, I think this speaks to the culture. At the same time, The Dark Knight Rises comes out. Now, this is Christopher Nolan. This is 2012. And there's a character, I was going to say bad guy, but I'm going to say the anti-hero because he's not really the bad guy. Is this I mean, sort of, is this guy named Bane, who is played by Tom Hardy. Now, the plot of the movie, spoiler alert in case you've haven't seen it, is that Bane is a guy who, he's basically sort of a radical populist slash terrorist. And his whole thing is like, the wealthy elites have ruined Gotham, and we need to throw them out, we need to put them on trial, we need to murder them, and we, the people, need to be put in charge. So it's a fascinating thing because he, in many ways, has become emblematic at that point of our conflicted relationship with, like, who's the good guys, who's the bad guys, and who do we want to root for? Who do we see ourselves as, right? There are two Bane lines in that movie, The Dark Knight Rises, that I think are really, really telling about where we were and where we are going. Remember, this is 2012. One is, peace has cost you your strength, victory has defeated you. Donald Trump could say that. And the other is, I am necessary evil. Now, Donald Trump's not going to say that, but I want to talk about how it connects to Donald Trump. So Bane becomes sort of he becomes a major figure in the culture. He's more conflicted. He's, Batman is, we're away from the superhero as just plain old good guy, and the bad guy is just plain old bad guy. So I was thinking of Bane and Cena and Hogan when I was watching Donald Trump speak on Tuesday night, because Donald Trump is in many ways a heel. And I don't mean that as like a bad guy. I mean that as like the modern pro wrestling definition of a heel. He is technically he is not the good guy that you root for. He's kind of a bad boy who you also might root for, right? Like, his behavior is like a perfect fit for a heel. I was thinking of this during the speech. So if you watched any of the speech, he repeatedly would like turn to where Democrats were seated and kind of antagonize them. Oh, yeah, I bet you'd like that, wouldn't you? He called Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas during the speech. I mean, this is the exact behavior of a pro wrestling heel. And 20, 30, 40 years ago, we would never have wanted that in a president. Like, look at Ronald Reagan, a Republican like Donald Trump, but Ronald Reagan was kind of like mannerly. He would have never called someone Pocahontas who disagreed with him. He had never openly antagonized the other party in a State of the Union speech, because that was the era of Hulk Hogan, the good guy. Eat your Wheaties, take your vitamins, lift weights, do push-ups, be kind of the American ideal. It's us good guys, America, against the bad guys. Well, that has been totally jumbled. And Donald Trump, I think, is a manifestation of the fact that we identify with the Trumps and the heels and the Banes a lot more now than we ever did before. Because I think, it's this sense that, like, a heel can tell you like it is. A heel can speak out against sort of political correctness. A heel can speak truth to power, whereas a face, a good guy, would never do that. And I think Trump knows that, right? Trump knows he doesn't need really to be liked. He needs people to think he's genuine, authentic, willing to speak truth to power, take on the sacred cows in both parties. And I think that has really, really, really resonated, because I think people think good guys have been sort of overrated, that they're fake, they're inauthentic, they're not real. Whereas Trump, John Cena now as a heel, Bane, are real, right? They represent, they are willing to acknowledge that not everything is perfect in this world, and that sometimes we're the bad guys and sometimes we need to be the bad guys. And that the bad guys, or the so-called bad guys, sometimes are more honest and real than the good guys. And so I really do think, I think of it as the heelization of American culture and politics. So movies, pro wrestling, politics, you are seeing people like Donald Trump, who once would have been shunned for what they were willing to say and do, become lauded, or at least people are willing to vote for them, not in spite of the kind of heel behavior that Donald Trump exemplifies, but because of it, because he's willing to sort of give the finger to the political establishment, maybe literally, but figuratively, because he is willing to say, Republicans do stupid things and I'm going to stop being stupid, because he is willing to be a bully on the national and world stage. there is a big segment of the American public in our culture who finds that appealing. They may not like him. They may not even like his methods, but they like that he's willing to say and do what he is willing to say and do because they think it makes him real. They think it makes him interesting. They think it makes him funny, and they are drawn to it in some way. So I really spend a little time thinking about that. Watch a little pro wrestling because I think pro wrestling documents sort of the where we are as well, if not better than anything else, movies, TV, music in our culture right now. So watch a little of it, and when you watch it, think of Donald Trump. Watch the bad guys. Watch John Cena. Watch how he carries himself and think of how that plays in our modern culture. It is no longer the bad guys who are always getting booed. They sometimes get cheered. They sometimes get laughed with, not at. I think that's important. All right, that's it for me. As always, I ask you to do a few things. I ask you to subscribe. As I did earlier in this video, I'm going to ask you again. It's that important. Subscribe if you like what I'm doing. Again, I am independent, nonpartisan, and authentic. I always promise to be those things. I don't always promise that you're going to agree with me because you won't, and that's okay. That's a good thing. You shouldn't agree with anyone all the time, maybe even yourself. I ask you to like this video, if you thumbs up it if you can, and comment on it if you can. Both of those things help me with the YouTube algorithm. That helps me get my videos out to more people, allows me to do more of this kind of stuff. And finally, I ask you to do something that is as old as time, which is if you like these videos, tell people about them. Tell your friends, tell like-minded people, tell people who are open-minded and want to learn more about politics that this is a channel where you can do that. All right, everybody, take care.